You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seat belts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
All right, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast, and we have a special guest, friend of the show, ChiStyleGaming. So this week we are covering, the three of us, our Streets of New Capenna set review now that it's out and we've all seen the price decline that we're going to get on Friday. So let's get started.
Yep. So we discussed ahead of time a couple cards that we're going to walk through today, and the first one that came to mind is Luxor, Giada's Gift. This is the equipment in the set that basically pushed Devoted Druid right before its spoiler in the commander decks, and this is a brand new equipment that essentially puts a +1/+1 counter on your creatures. So with Devoted Druid, you're able to tap it and stack it infinitely, just grow taller, or you could attach it to something like Saheeli Rai and make infinite Saheeli Rais, and if you have a sack outlet or something like Disciple of the Vault, because Saheeli Rai becomes an artifact, you get to do infinite damage. So our thoughts on Luxor's Gift to start. Anybody think this is going to have long-term legs at a $20 price tag?
No, it's gonna be popular, but I mean this card sitting. I've got a TCG player pulled up right now. It's already down to 18 and some change on direct. I just don't see this. There's too many good cards. The Triomes are gonna eat up some value. I can't see this holding this price tag.
I think it's fine that it's a mythic, to hold price for a little bit, but it's just like the removal we just got from Neon Dynasty that was an infinite combo with Devoted Druid.
Yep.
It just doesn't occupy enough of a meta that I think that will last long term. Now, is there a chance they print another busted creature down the line that's combos with? Yeah, I trust Wizards of the Coast to make poor design decisions. It happens. But as of right now, I think $20 is a real long-term goal for this card.
I agree. The first note I have on this is that I don't think this ever sees play in EDH because it immediately combos with Devoted Druid. Who cares that you can keep putting +1/+1 counters on Devoted Druid to go infinite? It's just not there. It's too narrow in an application. My initial thought was like, oh, this might push Jaleva decks a little bit. And then we got the Jaleva deck.
Yeah.
Like, literally printed the Jaleva deck. And the only other thought I had was that if this price is going to be floated seriously, it's probably valued in Stoneforge Mystic formats. But I don't even know what it's going to do there. Like, there was talk about Modern with Eldamri's Call, kind of like slotting Stoneforge Mystic into the tutor package of the Heliod combo decks, but you no longer use Heliod and you only have like one Ballista.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't seem like you're marrying two different themes well enough together. Yeah. $20 seems outrageous. I honestly think that this tanks to 5 to 8 because it has super narrow application currently. But as Thirsty mentioned, being a mythic does float the price a little bit within this set.
A little.
Like,
yeah.
You guys think it'll tank that low, or am I crazy at 5 to 8?
No,
I don't think that's crazy. No, I think it's realistic that it could go that low. It is just narrow, like you said. There's just not, you're either thinking like Super Friends decks want this maybe, and that's even not like a shoe-in. You might want it in a couple of examples like the Devoted combo, like you said, or the Saheeli Rai combo. But other than that, it's just not, for being a colorless artifact, it's just not that good unless something shows up randomly in like Pioneer where it uses this card somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, another hyped card is Bootlegger Stash. So we take a look at Bootlegger Stash. 5 and a green artifact. Very simple. Lands you control have tap, create a treasure token, and this leans into the theme of New Capenna, which is just treasure creation.
Yeah.
And the only card I could think to compare this to is the Great Henge. And I don't even think it's close to that. But this is market right now for 28. I think Great Henge was probably similar, might around 20, right around 25 at release.
Yeah.
But I just don't think this has anywhere near the applicability of that, and it's not nearly as broken as Paradox Engine.
So I agree it's not as broken as Paradox Engine. I think we actually do disagree on the financial value of it, because this to me is a doubling season card more than it is anything else. So I think that short term, you're actually probably right. It's like $15, $20.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we do hit that $50 price though, like we did with Great Henge. And I don't think it'll be as fast as Great Henge. It won't be in like 4 to 6 months. But I think within the next year, I could very realistically see this hitting $50.
So I think to get to 50, I disagree with that just a little bit. I was pegging this card as being one of the most overpriced of any, which was saying something, because S&C is the pre-order prices in S&C are surprisingly high in my opinion. I think they're like more egregious than usual.
Mm-hmm.
This one was at 38 just a couple days ago. It's already down to 27 some change at the time of this recording, and I think it's not going below 20 realistically. I think that's just not a scenario that plays out, but I also think 50 is going to be tough, and the main reason for that is I don't really see this having any application outside of EDH. Henge had that. Henge has seen play everywhere else, particularly standard. Before COVID shut down, Henge was in certain adventure decks and other things like that. So that's my only, I guess, thinking on this. That said, if this thing doesn't get reprinted 2 years out or something, 50, maybe not even 2 years. You said a year, somewhere in that range, right? Like it seriously could be a $40, $50 card, at least on TCG Direct by then.
Yeah. When I was writing notes for this card, all I could come up with was like synergies and ways to use this: Goldspan Dragon, Anointed Procession, Doubling Season, Urza, Revel in Riches, Time Sieve, Mechanized Production. And then I was like, well, what's the negative of this card? Oh, it requires you to bank your mana. Well, how do you break that? Wilderness Reclamation, Seaboard, Muse, Zakama. And like you start to look into it, like, okay, there's definitely some combo aspects here, which kind of makes it to me feel like Paradox Engine, which is why I mentioned that up top.
Yeah.
It's a good comparison. I've heard that a few times now, and I think it'll be interesting to see how people put this card to use. Because it's like the thing about this card to me, just on like a power level evaluation, is it's awkward, right? It's like not good enough for CEDH most likely. Like I just don't think that's realistic. It's probably too good for like kitchen table casual Magic, because you ramp into this thing and all of a sudden you can basically piece combos together on your own. That's what happened with Paradox Engine. People who never comboed all of a sudden like, oh, Paradox Engine, wow, I can do like this cool thing. So I mean, it'll be interesting. There is a scenario here that plays out where this card ends up being in an awkward, like, it's too good for casual tables. It's not good enough for CDH, and it ends up like Niv Mizzet Perun or something like that, where it's like you just can't play it frequently enough for it to be enjoyable. So
the other question I had was placement in 5-color decks. You have Chromatic Lantern and the World Tree is basically your S and A tier options, irrespectively, and then this slots in as a B tier option. I guess that's something else that I thought of when I was looking at this card, and just it doesn't allow a 5-color deck to function, but it definitely allows you to be a little more robust with your mana base, because this applies to all your lands, even something like Maze of Ith, which doesn't naturally tap for mana. You can bank a treasure off of your Maze of Ith. My valuation on price though is just way different than both of you. I thought this would tank to like 15 or somewhere in there in release weekend, but I don't know what it looks like long term, because it has so many unique applications, but it also seems kind of fragile. Whereas with Paradox Engine, you were essentially comboing it with 2 artifacts that just recurred, or 3 artifacts that could recur any artifact from your graveyard. So you had 2 to 3 pieces of redundancy. The Great Henge is just a value proposition. So if you have to get it back with an Ewit or a Regrowth or something like that, the value is to be had there. If somebody pops your Bootlegger Stash, and then you have to go fish for it out of your graveyard, that's anywhere from like $8 to 11 mana to do that. And
that's fair.
I don't know, like, so to me, the initial valuation that I had was a lot lower. That's not saying that this doesn't have legs long term. It's hard for me to kind of piece that one out, because so many people are focused on Revel and Riches and Time Sieve combo that I can imagine it hovering at 20. I could imagine it just continue creeping over time.
Yep.
Up towards 15. I think for me, this is one of the hardest cards to evaluate in the set because it screams EDH, but it screams it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
The one other thing to think about when you're evaluating Bootlegger Stash is what commanders want it, because actually there's one specifically that comes to my mind immediately. It's a recent print within the last year, which is Beladros, Witherbloom, because you can untap your lands. You pay, 10 life, untap your lands.
Yep.
So that's just an example. This is an example, I think, of a rare case where a card printed actually might spark new interest in a commander that otherwise people may have just kind of blown over. So I would keep an eye on Beladros in particular.
Okay.
I think the extended arts are going to start moving. They already have. Spoiler, I've already looked at the data and stuff. They're already starting to move just a little bit.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the pack non-foils as closely, but I just mentioned it because there are rare cases where cards get printed that bring commanders back into the limelight. This might be one of those scenarios. The other commander, by the way, that pops into my head is ironically another dragon. It's Corvold. This card just loves Corvold and vice versa.
Yeah,
so I don't think that one's got anywhere to go necessarily, but just mentioning that those are two cards that, if you're a dragon lover, you're a ramp treasure lover, like those two cards synergize great with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that Bootlegger Stash and Revel and Riches basically pair you into Golgari, open you up to Beladros Witherbloom and Corvold.
That's right.
The Gitrog monster. Some what's the Jund Planeswalker that can be your commander. The cat.
Windgrace.
Yeah.
Windgrace.
Lord Windgrace, which oftentimes has a lands matter theme.
Yeah.
There's definitely some.
Jund feels like the sweet spot for bootleggers because it opens the door to things like Revel, like you said, Revel and Riches. You get Gold Span out of that. You get Dockside. There's a lot there. You get Zorn too is another one. So like there's a lot there if you're in Jund here. So maybe Corvold is worth a look. I threw it out there as a random. That's not any. It was off the cuff. But now that I'm thinking about it, that almost feels like the right card for this, or commander for this card, the best commander, in fact.
Yeah. The deeper you go into the Bootlegger Stash, the more interesting it becomes.
Yeah. So older whiskey at the back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it. Bottom of the barrel.
Past that, another call out that I think is just as interesting to talk about is Giada, Font of Hope, the effectively new Angel commander, I believe.
Yeah.
1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature, Angel, Flying Vigilance, and basically
all the words.
Yeah. When another angel you control enters the battlefield, each other angel you control enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can tap to add a white, but you can only spend that to cast angel spells. So effectively, if you cast this on turn 2, on turn 3 you can both attack and cast a 4-drop, which is kind of neat.
Yep.
This
pretty nuts.
Yeah, this was difficult for me to work over because we've talked about the angel theme a number of times on the cast. In regards to picks usually, and that is a casual favorite tribe, but apparently it can also be really aggressive, and I just have like a bias or a blind spot to that. I just forever think the mono white angels deck is just kind of like plotting and boring.
Yeah.
But apparently that's not the case. So I'm curious to see what you two have to think about this.
I think this is, on the topic of evaluation, this is going to be the de facto mono white commander for Angel Tribal. Just hands down, it's the best that's ever been printed for the command zone at this point. So because of that, it's a funny thing. It's kind of like a paradox here. I have an opinion on the price, which right now it's around $4. It was at $6. I said that was too high at $6. It's still too high at $4 for everybody that's listening, and I'll get into that later.
Okay.
But That's my take. But I do think on the flip side of that, this is going to be an extremely popular commander. Now, the price itself, I want to talk about that for a second. The price is very contingent on one thing, and that's if this thing actually somehow sees play in Pioneer, which doubt it, but you never know. Otherwise, this is not going to hold $4. It simply can as a commander only type card. In terms of popularity, though, just flipping the script here, it's going to be popular. It's going to be very popular. I think it'll end up in the top 3 of the set in terms of most popular commanders. You got Jetmare to contend with, and then the 2 and the 3 spot are kind of wide open. So if you're speccing on Angels, if you believe in that, there's a lot of good mono white Angel specs out there. And I guess I would just encourage you to kind of go do a once over on that. One of the cards I was kind of looking at right when this was spoiled was Serif Sanctuary, which is a common that says when it enters battlefield, you gain a life, and then if every time an angel enters, you gain a life as well, and it taps for a colorless. Foil. It's only been printed twice. Foils of that are very intriguing. The boat might have sailed a little bit because they're already around $7 now, but there was a little bit of movement during spoiler season on them. But that being said, I mean, this is angels are kind of like dragons and like, you know, merfolk and stuff. They're kind of a beloved tribe. Druids too, right? Or elves too, like a beloved tribe. So foils, I think, might be the way to go on a lot of these specs, actually.
Yeah.
I don't normally recommend that either.
We've had to pull back, but mainly because right now it's hard to get foils to stay flat. So it's difficult for us to push a spec when somebody that picks it up on TCG Player could push back on it as being damaged despite being pack fresh.
Amen.
But the valuation you put forward for price is something I entirely agree with. When I started writing these notes, I think it was floating at 6 or more. Mm-hmm. And I call this as a $5 card, but there's a number of caveats here. First is that this is also a standard set rare, and the first set after the OP announcement, so there's going to be infinite, and it should be $3 or less. But here's the caveat: Angels.
Yeah.
So it just gets a bump.
It's a good caveat
for being the new general. The rest of the valuation I had surrounding the card came down to whether or not this beats out Lyra in a game, and I guess this is kind of what I to refer back to what I was mentioning before. In the early game, this thing is amazing. Yeah. Before the board wipe, it is great. But if you don't have Avacyn or a way to recover after the board wipe, then I think it becomes a very poor general thereafter. And Lyra serves you better because another angel or two Lyra might affect better. So there's a build aspect to this deck that I don't quite understand yet. And from what I could gather based on the data presented on Rec, I am uncertain if this would outseat Avacyn or Lyra, but still being a top 3 general for the deck overall makes this a very good look as a spec, because it is very approachable from a price standpoint compared to either of those two.
Yeah, I think price-wise, yes, $5 is too much for this card right now because, you know, I don't think Angels is really going to be that insane in Standard. Not that Standard prices have really been driven by Paper Magic for a while anyways. It looks like we're going Pioneer. Mm-hmm. So, doesn't seem like it's going to be there. I would not be surprised, I will say, if we wake up one day and we look down and we haven't thought about this card in months and all of a sudden it's $10 or $15. Just because, caveat, Angels. But I think that right now it's way too hyped. People are saying this card is just the de facto Angel General. Sure, absolutely, you're right, it is. But it hasn't even hit the market yet, so we haven't even come close to the floor when it's already down to $3, $4.
Yeah.
There's just no way to me that stays. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it seems to me.
I just think there's... and I don't know if this is even realistic or not, but the idea that because it is Angels, there's just going to be a lot of casual tier 2, tier 3 type decks that are out there that are just built around this thing. Yep. And so, you know, I think what anyone that's listening to this has to remember is casual Magic is out there, and there's a lot of people who still play casual 60 card Magic too, or 75 card Magic for that matter. So we could see a scenario where people are honoring 4 ofs of Giada and building casual 60 card Angels, for example, and showing up at F&M with that. And by the way, just as an aside, one of the reasons I'm kind of like pushing that in my head is because a card not too long ago that was printed called the Book of Exalted Teeds works very well with this. All of a sudden those 3/3s turn into 4/4s, and you're on a 5-turn clock, right? So it's actually increases with every Angel that you get. So bottom line is, it is really hard to predict this one, but I think the theme that we all identified is _Angels, because don't sleep on that, I guess, right?
Exactly. We like to harp on casuals drive the market, and that is where some of the easiest specking comes from. And again, this is another card that screams EDH, but is getting closer to the correct price than some of the other options we were presented with. So this could be faster action than some of the other specs when we see, in 2 days, everybody gets their stock, right? We could probably pick this up and start churning faster than Luxor or Bootleggers.
For sure. That's right.
So after that, we wanted to talk about the Triomes, because they're big. They finish out the set. Yeah. But at this point in time, we have all 10, so it finishes out the set. So we have Jund, Grixis, Nea, Bant, and Esper floating around. And we thought to kind of tier them and discuss. And I don't know if we're that different on the first one. I think we might all agree that it's the Jund Triome right now.
Yeah. As a lifelong Jund player, I agree.
I'm not gonna. I would say Jund for me is in the top 3. It's not my number 1.
Oh, okay.
But I'll put it. I will say this, because of Ob Nixilis, the Ob that we just got out of this deck. I think Jund is going to be the sleeper here. So, maybe a better way of phrasing all that, to me, Jund is actually the best value, because I think we're all thinking, or you guys, it sounds like a particular Jund number 1. I'm close on. I'm number 2, number 3 with it. I don't think everybody's going to think that it's number 1, and I think you're going to be able to get some kind of sneaky good prices on it before people realize, hey, I actually need like 2, 3, 4 copies of this thing for my Jund builds that are going to materialize in Pioneer. So
I actually went through and I split this out into a Commander ranking and a Constructed ranking. In Commander, I have this as number 1, but for Constructed, I have it tied at the 1 spot.
Interesting.
I think from a Commander...
Esper?
With Bant.
Okay, that's the other one I'd say.
So I have Esper number 1, which is Rafine's Tower, and here's the reason for that. I'm pretty bullish on the OP announcement. I know you guys just covered that in your most recent episode, and or maybe it was 2 episodes ago now. But
every episode.
right. I think you guys did a couple episodes if I remember right. But anyway, no, I'm really bullish on Esper number 1. Jund is like 2/3 tied with Bant. Those are like coin flip for me. The thing that is the deciding factor for me on both Esper and really probably the tiebreaker on Jund is that they both access black in Pioneer, which gives you access to Thoughtseize. So they unfortunately don't give you turn 1 access, but it's something I think that people need to consider, because decks that weren't splashing Thoughtseize might be able to now. Just as I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. And then I mentioned Ob Nixilis. Ob is going to be a very powerful card in a lot of formats, I think. I think it's really good in Pioneer, and talking with a few folks, and so once again, you want access to that black, and that's where that Jund one specifically looks really appealing.
Okay. I had Esper at number 2 for Constructed. For Commander, but Constructed actually tied with Grixis for last place. But that's because I don't know Pioneer that well yet.
Fair.
Okay.
So I
That's fair.
I was looking at that from a standard and a modern standpoint.
Interesting. Okay.
I think Esper, to me, it's Esper and Jund as the 1B, 1A, basically.
Okay.
So we feel the same then, Thurs.
And I think I actually, overall, because I didn't separate by Constructed into EDH, I actually think the like 2A 2B for me is Bant and Grixis, and I put Bant a little bit ahead, and obviously, very far bottom is Naya because that's whatever. But I think that any of the ones that give you black, especially when you're considering EDH, are going to be high on the list.
Yeah.
Right, Fleabag, let's go.
Yeah, that all jives with me. What you just mentioned for your rankings for Commander is exactly how I have it. Jund above Esper and Bant, then Grixis, and then somewhere behind everything else in the rear view is Naya.
Yeah,
and that's
I will say I think these are incredibly good values. Look at what happened with the Triomes out of Ikoria. And we touched on this before we went live, like a month later after they get to the masses, there was just a straight downward trajectory.
Yep.
I think all of these are great long term. But we have to rank them because that's what we do. So
Yep. Yeah, they're all going to be great pickups for sure.
Yeah. I basically, as far as price is concerned, tied these to the Ikoria Triomes.
Yeah.
We've seen them grouped, the IKO Triomes from release all the way through now, and they're just kind of holding steady at about $10 to $15, depending on which one, because I think it's Savai is the Sultai one, and there's still the price memory from Standard and Pioneer from that deck. And to me, I think it feels right for these to all sit around the same spot, 10 to 15, maybe 9 to 15, depending on demand for like the low-hanging fruit, be it Naya or Grixis or what have you.
Yeah, I think the one thing to watch and be mindful of is Ikoria was the first set that had collector boosters. So that was kind of an interesting thing for that, but it did have some production issues. So, I mean, I'm still super bullish, but, in the interest of transparency, like you said, there's going to be a ton of this product. It just followed the OP announcement. Maybe we don't see these get to the, $15, $20 range. They may be like the 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to fetch lands. You can never lose getting fetch lands. I don't think you can ever lose getting Triomes.
Yep.
They're going to be liquid
100%.
forever.
Yep, I think that's exactly right.
The only
one
okay.
Go ahead.
No, all you.
I was going to just offer one other way to kind of look at this or angle to look at this from is thinking about top commanders and which ones would actually want this. So one of the reasons I rank Esper a little just slightly ahead of both Jund and Bant is because some of the top commanders actually want Esper more. I'm thinking of Traxa just as an example, although Traxa wants Bant as well. So, but if you go kind of down the list just really quickly, I'm looking at the top commanders based on EDH rec, and you got Atrax up there. You've got Edgar Markov, which is the Triome out of Ikoria, so ignore that. Then you've got Corvold, which is Jund. You've got Dragon, probably irrelevant. I don't think Triomes can be super relevant for Dragons. Maybe one or two of them. Jund probably is relevant in Dragons because of red and green being so important. Yep. And then Omnath is Bant. Probably
everything but red.
Yeah. So anyway, those are the top 8, and you figure it doesn't help a lot because it spreads it out a little bit. Bant is actually the most common out of those, and Jund is in there. So I could be wrong. No. Honestly, Jund, I'm like almost talking myself into Jund being for one here myself.
That valuation you just did is what I did. And I went a little deeper, and that's how I got to the rankings that I came to. The reason I gave Jund the edge because there's a lot more decks that just want to do like weird shenanigans with lands, and Jund is fine playing a longer game or recurring it to hand to cycle back through or stuff like that. It just has a little more utility with the land base, but it's not by a huge margin that I have it over both Esper and Bant. But that's basically what I came to, and the Grixis decks that you see on that list are like Cedrus and Obeka, basically very similar style decks where you just look to do something silly and end the turn. And also from experience, I don't think I care that much about the Triumph. It might replace like the Rakdos Carnarium, maybe.
Yeah.
TBD, but I don't think it's a huge draw for that. And then Naya is Naya.
You just don't need it in those colors because the ramp usually gets you mana fixing to begin with, right? Like you don't want your lands coming in tapped.
Yep. The only
You want to use them to cast ramp
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, the only concern I had with these, and it basically became a concern after thinking about this for a couple of days, is that if these are reprinted in the same style as the temples, then it becomes difficult to want to hold them long term. But if they're printed like the check lands, the buddy lands, then
Yeah.
I think you're perfectly fine. And without seeing them in the commander decks for either Ikoria or New Capenna, I think we're pretty safe with these at any point.
Yeah, and Thirst brought this up when we were kind of prepping, but they're all sort of like Capenna specific. It feels like Xander's Throne is the name of, or sorry, Xander's Lounge is the name of one. Like, is Xander got a franchise going on? So they're going to be tougher to reprint as a result of that. They probably won't show up in Commander decks in the future because they typically don't put those type of lands in there. So
we've had opportunities to get the Triomes, and they've just seemingly deliberately avoided it.
Yes.
So
this round, I think they put like Cascade Bluffs in, and a couple of those the filter lands, I think, and it was the first time that I remember them putting like a $7, $8, $10 land in a Commander deck in forever.
A long time. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yep. Absolutely. Anything else you want to touch on in regards to the Triomes before we start looking at some overrated, underrated stuff?
Let's get to the meat and potatoes.
Okay, so we'll start off with, I think, probably the biggest one on this list for overrated, Halo Fountain. So,
yeah, I pegged this one as overrated right away because as soon as it was spoiled, the first thing I did, like probably every other fun brewing finance person out there, is trying to figure out how do you break the card, and turns out they did a really good job making this tough to break. It's not a very easily broken card. So anyway, that's the simple version of that. It does, I believe, go infinite with well, not even really infinite. You can do a bunch of stupid shenanigans with Earthcraft, but that's about it. Like, there's just not much there.
Yep. This card, I think, suffers from Gristlebrand as a commander syndrome in that you see it coming.
Yeah.
And I because of that, it just makes the card ridiculous. When I read through this, the main note I have is this has the text, "You win the game" on it. So it's just going to be hyped to hell and back.
Yeah.
Because people want to win the game easily.
And like we kind of touched on before, Shy, when you and I talking about it too, was that people seem to think that this is Staff of Domination 2.0.
Yeah.
Because it's an artifact that has a bunch of stuff you do for mana.
Yep.
And it's just not. Like, yes, it is technically an artifact that you need to have mana to do a bunch of stuff, but that stuff requires a bunch of other cards. Whereas Staff basically required either Pemin's Aura or Metalworker or something, like one other card, and that was it. You need a bunch of other stuff to make Halo Fountain work. And that's why I think it's doomed to, like, the brew tables. It's hard to break. It just is.
Yeah, exactly. This is $9 right now, according to Scryfall. So
still too much.
Agreed.
I think this is going to be one of those like slow droppers that just keeps kind of going down over time as supply keeps coming out, because it's just not going to be able to absorb. People, to your point, they're going to start trying to brew it and then be like, dang, this is really tough. Like, can't figure out how to use this thing effectively.
Yep.
I made it kind of this might be an aggressive hot take because it's probably unrealistic just because it says win the game on it. But I actually think this is like a not exactly bulk mythic, but like a $2 mythic. Like, this is it's just not that good. And anyway, I'll leave it at that. We'll see if it goes that low. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, though.
No, I agree. I think it puts some weird pressure on stuff. White Sun Zenith, Finale of Glory, March of the Multitudes, because that's just the easiest way to trigger the last clause. Just make a bunch of tokens really quick, and I think that's probably the lasting impact this card might have. But otherwise, hard to agree. Whereas close to bulk as we can get without truly being bulk. Yeah. All right, so next on the list we have Rocco Cabaret Caterer, and there's an article that just came out about this today. It's Page the Untouchable. maybe wrote it.
Talking about how this is the greatest commander for food chain ever. It's just food chain 2.0.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Stop it.
Right.
Stop it.
So we'll bring this up. I saw the meme a couple weeks ago, and the professor said, "When you get this joke, you're old." And I responded back with, "Ow, my bones." But
yeah,
it literally just puts one creature into play per turn. I don't really see the hype around this card overall.
Yeah, I mean it's
not.
It's fine if you're like it. Proshko's infinite on its own with food chain. You need something else for Rocco to work. It just doesn't work that way. You're not getting tokens. You're not getting this infinite ramp like you are with Prosh. And hey, you know what? Maybe there is a CEDH list there somewhere for someone that wants to do something new and exciting, but I just don't think you'll see it at like the high tier CEDH tables. It is an uncommon, which, courtesy of collector boosters, may actually inflate its price. It's hard to keep track of what's even in those anymore.
Yeah.
I just I don't know. People are saying they think this is a $5 to $10 to $20 uncommon in foil at some point, and I don't know that I buy that.
I don't see that at all. The card this reminded me of immediately when it was spoiled was Prime Speaker Vanifar from Ravnica Allegiance, where I remember when that card was spoiled, and it felt like every single person in the entire community was like, "Oh my gosh, it's pot on a stick," and it was like the greatest thing of all time. And I was writing for Quiet Speculation at the time, and I wrote an article that was basically like scathing, saying that Tace is actually the best commander in the set. And I remember writing that and people being like, "You're nuts." I was right. Rocco is going to be very similar to that. It's going to go down the same path where right now people are just trying to find that perfect line to break it. What are the exact combination of cards that I need to tutor up and make it work? Like an Academy Rector into Ugin, for example. Oh, awesome. Like you did something that we've seen a million times before in ETH. But I think
with more steps.
Right, exactly. With more steps, exactly. Because you still have to kill off that Academy Rector. But no, I'm just making that comparison because I think it's just kind of it's a buzzy type card, and I think that's gonna wear off pretty quickly. I don't even have this one. Just by the way, I don't even have this one in my top 5 for most popular commanders long term. So I try to rank those for my own evaluation purposes. I don't even have this in my top 5. So
No, I think the card's an interesting look overall. It just seems like a better in the 99 kind of thing. But
I agree.
One of the best things I think you can do with this is clamp it. It's only got 1 toughness. So
what a great card Clamp is.
I know, right?
Ironically, I just sold a couple of those for like $15 a pop on Direct, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa.
Wait, what? Yeah, exactly.
People still buying that card. They haven't put it in a commander set in forever, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's probably too expensive now. It's going to have to be a master set.
Or a list card.
Oh, or the
tops on the list in Cappena. It's actually no. They changed the list. It's only rares and mythics now. So
the list is pretty baller actually for Cappena. It's like 63 cards now, and it's all rares and mythics. It's really it's actually a value slot now in set boosters.
Yeah, it was a really tight update. I was actually really impressed with it when they did it. For me, I'm kind of looking at 2 cards as overhyped, but I don't think anybody cares about Agnes anymore. I think that wore off really quickly. That's just the Jun General that makes tap treasures. I think people might still be a little too high on Lord Xander, though.
I think that's right. I actually, it's really funny. I'm glad you brought that up because this is another whatever hot take you want to call it, but I actually think Lord Xander is the 6th best commander in Cappena. And I know it's maybe not a super hot take, but like I actually don't think it's a top 5 commander in this set, and I think people are just going to realize how unfun it is to play against, just like Tergrid. That's what it reminded me of, was Tergrid from, was that Kaldheim? Kaldheim, I think. It's just very similar. It's like people are going to hate playing against you. You're going to play it once, and people are going to be like, no, we're going to hate you off the table. And then it's not going to be fun for you to play. You're going to walk away, or you're going to pull out a new deck. So
the reason I think people are overhyped on this card is because everything says or targets one player.
Yeah.
So it's heads up focused. When I read this card, I was like, this is kind of crap. Has the general, but if you're gonna sneak it in, or if you're gonna Cedrus it in, and then end the turn, then I think it's perfectly fine in the 99.
Oh yeah, agreed. Very powerful 99 card.
And I think if that's the level of hype this card receives in the long term, I think it's fine otherwise. To the end that you're talking about, yeah, I think Punisher generals like this all suffer from the same thing, and Punisher cards in general. Like the Beamtown Bullies is pushing a lot of weird stuff right now, but the moment people actually sit down, play that deck once, and then, like you said, change the deck or get booted, like that's it, the hype.
It's just Nekusar all over.
Yeah,
when I saw this, there were two things I thought. One, it's a trap, and two, I can't wait to play this in Legacy Sneak and Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sneak and Show is going to be great with this card.
I was more excited for the second half than I was for the first. Like, I really don't care about this card in EDH, but man, I can't wait to play it in Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be excellent with any type of Sneak and Show ability. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I've actually, Perforos Bronze Blooded has been selling pretty well for me. I had a lot of that was like a missed spec from way back in whatever Theros or the Theros Beyond Death, and all of a sudden those are selling again. I think it's because of Lord Xander, realistically.
Yeah, it feels like that card is on and off in regards to whether it's specable at any given time, and you just got to find the moment where it starts to plateau because you're only weeks away from a new set. That pushes this thing. So skipping down to underrated, the first one that I have on the list that we talked about earlier is Rumor Gatherer. So 1 double white for a 2/1 with Alliance, which is why we're looking at this card. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1. And then
there's a lot of aggro players out there in Commander that this card pushes over the top. I mean, obviously, there's you need 3 or 4 of these type of things, but we're getting better now. We're starting to see white get a little bit more attention on the draw side of the house. This card synergizes excellent with token decks. It doesn't specify non-token, which is amazing. So this can be a really popular card, bottom line. It's because of the 2 white pips, it does make it a little bit more difficult to cast, but I mean, in any Celestia deck that's the Celestia tokens, for example, wants this. Any sort of aggro decks, soldiers is not, or like humans and soldiers aren't super popular, but those are both tribes that see some play. Anyway, I think this is just a card that is, you can get it for 20 cents right now at pre-order, and it's not going to stay that low. You'll be able to see this thing above $1 in no time. So,
I think this goes alongside the Convoke white card. What is the name of it? Benny Brack's Zoologist, to kind of prop white up in EDH in general. I didn't have this on the list of cards that I liked when I was going through this set, despite the fact that I did read through all the uncommons. I thought it felt a little over costed at the end of the day, but I think taking into consideration what you were talking about, which is just you start looking at what we're getting a little more holistically instead of as individual pieces, just look at the sum of the parts, then cards like this get a lot better, and you see where white is going within the format, and you can see that things are getting a little more aggressively slanted. People are going to be more interested in white, and that pushes cards like this. It pushes, or it might end up pushing the Spirited Companion, or the dog from Neo that's just Elvish Visionary but color shifted. We'll see interesting things for cards like this. Also a good clamp target.
Oh yeah, fair. Again, the theme of the set, good clamp targets. There were 2 uncommons that I picked for this set that I was like, these seem good, and Rumor Gatherer was one of them. And the reason it seemed good to me was less standard and less aggro, and more that, hey, here's kind of a pseudo Viscera Seer. Obviously, it's, when it enters, but it's a way for white to get card advantage in a creature-based plan that they don't have access to. Because, look, it's no secret, white has been trash for the game came out in 94. Since then. hasn't had good stuff. And the fact that they gave it an ability like this, and granted, it's only draw when it's the second time. Fine. It's still a step in the right direction for the color. It means this is something that is going to be identified with this from now on. And I think that's, look, this seems great to me in EDH because you know what mono white doesn't have? Card filter without scroll rack. So getting access to something like this, to a permanent source of this in a color that loves tokens, and as you said, importantly, it doesn't say non-token creature. I think this is one of those cards that you'll look at in a couple months and all of a sudden it'll be like a $2-3 card. And if it ever takes off in Modern, it's a $5-6 uncommon in my opinion.
Yeah,
as soon as it gets adaptation.
In aggro decks, it's almost they had to do the 2 white pips because otherwise people would start splashing this in red aggro or even like mono black aggro because it would just be super powerful in those settings. That's why to your point that you said overcosted, I really believe that's the reason specifically why they did that, was to make it challenging to splash. I just think though in Commander, right, like this thing is going to go around the table. The only way this thing probably dies is board wipes. Nobody's going to waste targeted removal on your Rumor Gatherer, and if they do,
you're winning.
Right, great. Like please do, right? So that's why I really like it so much. It's very specifically EDH. Anything that's constructed would just be gravy for this card. And like I said, you can buy them for 20 cents right now on TCG Player Direct. So
and the last card I think we have time to talk about is one of the ones that I thought's been underrated for a while. Also close to 20 cents, but it's a rare, and it's Maestros Ascendancy. I don't know how to pronounce that yet. Basically, it's like Kess, Dissident Archmage, but you also have to sacrifice a creature, and I think that's actually what makes this card better than people think. I think there are a lot of value proposition cards that you're going to end up playing in decks like Kess that you want in your graveyard to re-trigger and enter the battlefield's trigger. Archaeomancer is nothing to sneeze at. Even Runescar Demon, if you're just a slower style of player, and the ability to essentially recast utility spells from your graveyard that you're not going to be giving flashback any other way is definitely worth more than what this card is currently worth in terms of hype and cost.
It's a good one. Yeah. The fact that it's Grixis colors feels like the only thing kind of holding it back because it'll be limited, obviously, being 3 color, but I agree with you. It's for 25 cents you could do a lot worse. It's an excellent card, and it kind of feels almost like a pseudo Underworld Breach, like you said, Yogg Will. It does feel like that a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking,
or Past in Flames, even.
Exactly, right. Or Snapcaster Mage, something like that, where you can just target something, right? It just allows you to essentially rebuy your creature, and I think that's kind of the part that might be overlooked. Everybody sees the flashback and then the exile attached to it, but not the possibility to regrow that creature, to put it back to the top. I'm
just thinking of like something where you play your dockside and then you get all your treasures and then you cast something behind it, sack the dockside to like loop a dockside with like a reanimate. I'm just
something like that. Yeah,
so
for just
theoretically
value.
Exactly.
Right, and all of a sudden you're looking at like 15 mana on like turn 5, turn 6.
But that's it. You're on track with that. That's exactly what I'm looking at. Granted, you can only do this once each turn because they made the ascendancies pretty tight like that. But you're also not limited to your upkeep, right? That's when Kess triggers.
Yeah.
You get to do it whenever you want. So I think, to your point, that is actually one of the most powerful parts, is that you can start with the dockside.
It also has blue, so it hits extra turn spells, and I hate to point that out to people because I really don't enjoy extra turns decks anymore. I actually had my own, and I had a Niv Mizzet Perun deck, and I was like, man, this deck really is not fun to play with or against. So, but that being said, it's got blue, and you can loop turns, right? So there's worse cards that are on the ban list. Panoptic Mirror is on the ban list for basically the same reason. This card's 3 mana, and that card is like 5 or something like that. So I'm just throwing that out there.
3 to activate.
Yep. Just throwing that out there. It definitely can do what Paradox, or I keep saying Paradox Engine, Panoptic Mirror can do. So
I was going
to say I think, look, Kess is a general that existed in casual and competitive metagames. This is the same thing on a harder to interact with permanent type.
Yep.
In colors where you can tutor for literally anything you want, whenever you want. You can tutor chain for other tutors.
Yeah.
I've done it so I can hit Yogg Will with multiple tutors. It just seems great to me.
Look, Entomb is a fantastic card that can hit any other card in your deck and put it straight to the graveyard.
Sure can.
So, I think there's a world to explore with this card, and I think people are just not focused on it yet. So,
yeah, no, it's a great call. I love that you ended with that one. It's a really good one.
Hell yeah. But to close out the episode, ChiStyle, where can people find you?
Yeah, so the Twitter handle is just on screen here. It's at ChiStyleGaming. I'm pretty active on there. All my content is actually at our website, convictiongaming.com. We post articles there. I post a bunch of patron and non-patron stuff there, and then we also post all our podcasts to our website as well. If you're looking for the podcast on an app, we're on all like the major apps, Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. And I think that's about it. Twitter is Conviction MTG, so you can find us on Twitter there, and just as a source of various retweets and links to the articles and podcasts.
Do you still have a Patreon rolling?
We do. It's just patreon.com/convictionmtg. We restarted on January 1st. It's actually been pretty successful that we got the relaunch going, up to about 80-ish followers now, which is awesome. It's just it's $1 a month, and it gets you access to the patron articles, which I do. I was originally only going to do a couple a month. I've actually been pretty good about it and hoping to keep it that way, hoping to do more like 4 or 5 a month. So yeah, it pays for itself. It's really honestly just upkeep for us. The dollar that we get from each month goes towards our website, and we're saving towards getting like a logo and possibly a podcast editor, all the fun stuff to kind of build Conviction up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And just even if just following you on Twitter, if that's all somebody wants to do or can afford, it's still worth it. The dearth of information that you put forth is hands down some of the best.
I appreciate it. I try to give away a lot for free. It's one of my big passions is trying to help people save or make money playing Magic. So I've actually just one quick plug. I'm dropping what's basically the biggest kind of content undertaking that I've ever done on Conviction. The first part will go live the day after this recording, which would be Friday, the 30th of April. And it's basically going to be like a guide to evaluating cards. So giving people a way to look into the way that I think about cards. It's not perfect, right? No one's perfect, but last year I tracked my specs pretty closely. I don't actually share them publicly, but I do kind of share a lot of details on individual ones. And last year I had a 90+% hit rate based on kind of the way that I define each spec. It's the best I've ever had by far. I was operating really more in like the 60-70 range, and then made a couple of tweaks to a couple things I do. And long story short, I'm trying to write about that now. I want to like basically show how I'm doing it and how I got to that level, to give other people an opportunity to hopefully learn something and get better at their own card evaluation skills.
Rising tides help all ships. That's all.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a blast talking with you this episode and learning how you kind of step through a set and how you look at a set from a finance perspective and a play perspective, and kind of from on the surface, marry those two together to help make informed decisions.
I appreciate that, and back at you guys. Thanks so much for having me on, and
absolutely.
Hoping to do it again. Maybe can get you guys on our show too soon.
Oh hell yeah.
Definitely, we're down.
Yeah.
Be awesome.
But for MtG Cabal Cast this week, where you can find us on all major podcast networks, podcast, because I live in New England.
The khakis. Yeah. Go get your khakis.
Shut up. I wasn't born and raised here. I don't want it sneaking in. You can find us on all major podcast networks, available on YouTube and Patreon at MtG Cabalcast, Facebook as well. If you want to ping us though on Twitter, we are at MtG Cabalcast there. I am at Halt I Am Reptar. You are
at Thirsty Sizzler and at ChiStyleGaming.
At ChiStyleGaming. Sorry.
Right.
No, you're good.
We'll see you next week.
Give these guys a sub on YouTube.
Yeah.
Make sure you're following.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.